What's up, YouTube? Homebrew Subaru here, and I've got an empty garage, but I'm waiting for a Forester to come. It's the same one I worked on a couple weeks back. I'm going to slap some front brakes onto it, and we're going to go over the calipers, make sure the calipers are freed up and moving properly. And at the same time, I am going to do the transmission service on it. I think it could make it last a little bit longer, and it may make the hard shift engagement go away. And I'm not going to charge her a lot to do it, so might as well go ahead and try it, and if it works, bonus. So she should be here very soon, and no, I'm not going to put her on camera for you, but as soon as I get pulled in, I'll get the front of it up and the wheels off, and we'll start in some brakes. So the Forester has arrived. I've driven it up onto the front ramps just to get the front lifted. I will get the front wheels off, sit it on jack stands, and while I'm doing the front brakes, I'll probably slip a pan underneath the transmission and start draining the fluid. So as you can see, I forgot all about you guys. I've already started on one side and got one side halfway done, and I was like, oh yeah, the camera. So I went ahead and finished that one side. There's no sense in showing it both sides of the brakes. You only need to really see one side. I've got lots of other brake videos as it is. But I also started draining the transmission fluid. So under here you can see the pan, and there's a drain plug in the pan. They provide you a drain plug, which is really nice. Now I do have this thing sitting on an angle right now, so there's going to be a little pocket of fluid, old fluid in the back here. It would be nice to change, like actually drop the pan. I can tell it's got it's got a silicone gasket, like someone siliconed it. It's really dry. I requested this screw-on filter. It's like an engine oil filter, and it threads on just like that. But it is for the transmission fluid, and that's the filter that I actually requested. I was provided with the pan gasket and what appears to be an internal filter. Now I can't say for sure whether that's actually going to work for me or not, because I've gotten plenty of pans off in the past and found that it's the wrong filter, the wrong gasket. You know, you try and have a good close enough look at the gasket and the way that it's the basic pattern to it, but I mean, once that thing's down, it's down, and if you don't have the right gasket, then you're trying to reseal it. So I don't really want to go about doing all that. Not today anyway. Or tonight, I should say. Because the sun's already going down. So I'm going to just try and change the oil for now. So yeah, I'm going to kind of set up the camera on this wheel, and we'll get some brakes put on this side. The rotors have been on there for quite some time. I can feel a really heavy ridge here. It's probably 1 millimeter thick. Really heavy rust on the edge. It's just flaking off of there. And the pads have gotten down. I mean, you can see this pad is probably about maybe a millimeter or two left of material on it. And the other side of the pads were actually had heat cracks in them. So yeah, I'm going to actually, I just noticed this clamp is missing off the steering boot, or it's loose off there. Get that put back on. I just whipped these calipers off. The other side came apart really nice. The sliders were actually free, and I just had to re-lube them. The pad contacts are really dry, and actually this side I can see is missing the shims. So someone probably had a tough time putting them in the last time. Sometimes you've actually got to take and file off some of the paint. Or you can see these ones even have a little bit of odd angle at the back that could be machined true again. And sometimes the paint is just built up so thick on pads that they won't actually go back in. So sometimes you gotta, sometimes you actually have to take the paint off and grind them right down. You want to put a lot of lubrication in there to make sure they don't wear out prematurely like these ones did. Alright, so I'll bang off this caliper and get the show on the road. First we want to loosen these caliper bolts, because we do need to take the caliper directly off the bracket. We're going to remove the bracket and we're changing everything here, right? So 14 millimeter on the slider bolt, couple good whacks, can even loosen them by hand most times, but I don't suggest hitting it with your hand like that. It's not a good thing to do. And I usually grab the caliper here and give it a good pull just to compress the pistons a little bit, free it up. I'll maybe do it a little bit more, and then, wow, look at the rust coming out of those. And I'll leave it there. This split boot down here. So you can see this pad here is wore right down. The backing is actually starting to separate on this side. If I put my screwdriver in there, that would just crack right off. There's a heat crack right there. Oh, there is like shim plates. Someone cut them. That's what they did. They couldn't get the outside pad to go on. This one's also heat cracked. Material starting to lift over on this end. See, they couldn't get the one side to go in, so they snipped it there. Same with that one. We want to check to see if the sliders are free. These ones are nice and free. Now we want to take out the caliper bracket bolts, and they're 17 millimeter. Don't let the rust fool you. They are 17 millimeter. And I'm gonna have to reposition this wrench and actually put the double wrench on it. This guy's gonna be tight. These heads tend to rot and round pretty bad, and it's best to use a 6-point on them, but we know most wrench sets come out as 12 points. And getting a socket and a ratchet can be difficult because of this bolt for the strut, but a flex socket sometimes gets in there if you needed to. But I find most cases, if you don't wiggle the wrench all over the place, the 12-point will get it loose. Now the bracket's off. Sometimes you have to smash the rotor off with a hammer, but this one just come right off easy. I'll clear any of the rust and debris. The rotor will leave behind. Sometimes it'll leave a little rust up on top there. It'll fall in behind and give you a bad squeak. You can see a lot of this stuff's already loose and ready to flake off and cause noise. So I just like to start with a little bit of anti-seize right around the center of the hub here. That prevents the rotor, the new rotor, from seizing on in the future if they're ever going to be changed again, which I guess there's a good chance they might not be. So I've taken the brake rotor and given it a nice rinse with brake clean, and while we prep the caliper bracket, I'll just let this sit and let the brake clean evaporate off of it, or what's left of it. There's always usually a coat of packing oil on brake rotors, and you want to wash them. Soapy water is best, but brake clean is what generally is used in the shop because of how quick it is. So we get the caliper bracket. We want to remove these slider pins. Give them a good wipe down with the rag, and let's see, that pin's in really good shape. Get some brake lubricant. You don't need a whole lot. And just slide that guy right back in. Get this other one out. See, this one has a little rubber insulator on the end here. If it's heavily deformed, swollen, and you're not going to get that back in, discard. And it's not required, but it's good to have it. Tiny bit more on that one. And you always want to make sure this one goes back in. It's best to do one at a time. One has the rubber insulator, one doesn't. Now these shim plates. You want to make sure these surfaces are free of any heavy rust that'll prevent the shim plate from going into place. And get your new shim and just press it into place. You want to be careful here. This is pretty sharp metal. It will open up your finger, no problem, if you slip on it the wrong way. So I guess I don't know, maybe wear gloves. Just hope for the best. How about that? Brake lube. You want to make sure these are fully seated. Look on both sides. And this is where the pad is going to enter. So you want to make sure it's fully seated. And then you put your lube in. A little bit more. That should be good. Get the other plate, the other shim. Don't want to open my hand up right on camera, so I'll use this wrench to tap it down into place, make it cooperate. Some more lube. And some more lube for the other side. I'm going to double check the rotor. See, I rested my foot on it there for a little bit. Just take some of this residue off the back. You don't need to get your greasy hands all over it, just holds the edges. And a lot of people like to spin a nut onto the one of the studs, and it helps hold the rotor in place when you're installing the pads. But I'm gonna skip that step today. How about that? So with the bracket out, I got these pads. They're a decent quality pad, but I know they're rather cheap to buy. They do have a slot to get rid of some of the gases and dust, but they looks like there's even a spot for the squealer, but there wasn't a squealer, so we're gonna try and mount the one that they couldn't get in before. See how that's going into place. It's pretty much perfect. You just gotta get it pretty much right there. That's it. I don't know why they're angled off so bad. Like, why they, because you can see the ends are built up on them. And I don't know why they just didn't make it so they just seat in there properly. just the way that the metal sits on them. It's a little cheap, is what I should say. If stuff isn't lining up, you just kind of give it a little shake, a little wiggle. You can see those threaded in there really nice. So I'll take the 17 with the 19 again, and I'll just get them to the point where they're tight with the 17 and then double wrench it to tighten them right up. Hopefully the camera doesn't get in the way of this one. Take another pull on that. There. And now that that's bolted on, give those pads a little bit more of a squeeze to get them in there. Now we've got to push back the pistons on the caliper. And I'll explain to you how it's properly done, and then I'll show you how most people do it, because that's how I'm going to do it. But traditionally, when you're pushing back the pistons, most manufacturers and safety associations want you to crack the bleeder and evacuate all the fluid that's in there via the bleeder to get rid of all of it, and basically re-bleed when you get it all back together. But what most people do, which is what I'm going to do, is just push back the pistons. Yes, a lot of the old fluid that's in the pistons or in that chamber of the caliper is going to make its way back up into the system. Sometimes if there's too much fluid in the reservoir and the pistons have a lot of fluid, when you push them back, you might get some fluid coming out of the reservoir, out of the actual brake fluid reservoir, because there's just too much in the system at that point. And you can put some of the burnt, more contaminated brake fluid back up into the master, which is never potentially a good thing. So that's the reasoning for it. But if you have a set of these guys, or just a basic, giant C-clamp that you can crank in. So you take your brake pad and you set it back into the caliper kind of like that. Put your jaws on here and just slowly start pushing it in. And there, you can hear the brake fluid starting to run out of it now. So there's too much in there. Now that you have the pistons all pushed back, you want to make sure these slider pins, you got the flat sides positioned properly. They'll tighten up on inside there. They'll actually jam the slider from turning when you're putting in the caliper bolts. So just place your caliper in there, kind of like that. Grab your bolts. You don't want these getting misaligned when you're tightening them, because they won't tighten up properly. And grab your 14 again and just start tightening them up. And the same with the lower one. Make sure things are moving freely, and that should be it. Make sure to make sure, pump the pedal before anything else. So I've got the brake pedal all pumped up. Feels good. I want to get rid of this piece of grass. And I want to tighten this plug on the transmission. $17 if I failed to mention it before I started. Actually, I probably did because I never filmed taking that out. And I want to wipe up some of this brake fluid too that's been dripping. I don't know if there's a drip on the camera yet, but could be. And I mean, you can see the oil leaks haven't gotten any better since we left it. And now I'm gonna get this out of here and get some new transmission fluid in it. So I'm a little bit behind schedule, and I'm trying to bust moves here to get this thing done. Got the thing back down on the ground, wheels are back on, torqued. Torque is very important, make sure you torque your wheels. I've got the dipstick taken out of the back here, and she actually provided me with a funnel. I have one somewhere, I got a little gray one somewhere, but I don't think it's as long and nice as this one is. And just got some standard ATF to put back in. Now she only gave me 3 liters, and I'm pretty sure that's not going to be enough. And I know I don't have a lot here, I do have some. So I'm going to top it up, and we'll run it and check the fluid. You definitely want to check the fluid while it's running. It's almost even better if you go for a drive, as long as you have enough fluid. Come back and recheck the fluid level. Oftentimes you'll find it a little bit low. So yeah, I'm all finished this thing. I just went on the highway, heard this crazy noise. I pulled over. I was like, it made me almost shit my pants. I just looked over this thing again, and this is what I found. It's this windshield seal, and it cracks down on there on the highway like bang, crack, and oh my goodness, I didn't know the strut was coming off the thing, the hood was about to fly off of it. I couldn't tell. I even pulled over just to check to be safe. But anyway, the brakes feel awesome. The transmission shifts a little better, but it's not 100%. It doesn't go into gear really any faster, and but the thing pulls on the highway pretty good, and I don't think it's going to be a major problem in the very near future. So it's got some life put back into it for the meantime. I found a lot of other little things here and there, like that CV boot leak, and I put the clamp back on that inner tie rod boot. So yeah, with this thing all done, now I've got another job to do on the weekend, but I'm gonna try and, like I've been mentioning, get one of the seats out of the Legacy this weekend. Hopefully test fit it in the 240, and maybe have that video up for Thursday. That's the plan anyway. Things might change, so you never know. Anyway, if you like this video, definitely give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for me. Leave your questions and comments further down below, and I'll see you in the next one.